'Tis I, your old pal, King Chuck, and this is a very special podcast. So, I survived day one of Upheaval, and I am back in one piece, at least for now, because round two is tonight. Yes, I'll try to keep this short so I can take the dog back to the house, slap on some sunscreen. I did get a lot of sun yesterday, despite the Canadian wildfires. Plus, there was a brief shower. Ironically, I was eating when it happened, so I rushed over to a big old pine tree, and it actually did a damn good job of covering me from the elements. So it was the only bad thing that happened weather-wise. The smoke was very acrid, unfortunately. It wasn't, I did not breathe any of it in. But one of the artists at last night's event did cancel due to the smoke, and that was Poppy. Poppy is a raging force in the world of rock these days. You know, she started out as a pop artist several years ago, and then she kind of segued into rock. And so the story was last night her band came on stage promptly 7:05 p.m. or whatever it was, and they played a few songs, a few instrumentals. I was thinking to myself, Poppy will be out in a few moments. She did not appear on stage once. And then what happened was the man right in front of me showed everybody a text saying that Poppy was sitting on top of a guitar case backstage and is not going on stage at all, threatening to not go on stage. So anyway, her band played all of her hits, instrumentals, unfortunately, but at least the good news was they did kick ass. They were awesome musicians, but we did not pay to go see them. We paid to see Poppy. I mean, she's the star attraction. So here's the story. Poppy then released a statement on her social media, on her Instagram, saying that the air quality was too high for her, and she could not breathe in these conditions. So, and not only that, people noticed that her band, they were all wearing face masks. They were also wearing KN95 masks underneath as well. So, Poppy had at least had a legitimate excuse not to go out on stage. A lot of well-known musicians have all canceled their concerts due to the smoke issues. Now, today here in Grand Rapids, right now, there's hardly any smoke in the air. The skies are cloudy. I still got a nice suntan from yesterday, despite all the smoke in the air. Yeah, even with SPF 50 sunscreen that I used. Sunbun, by the way. So here's the scoop. First of all, so a few years ago, same situation happened with a band called In This Moment. In This Moment is a very popular band. I was a fan of their earlier stuff, and their lead singer Maria Brank is she's a very outspoken lead singer and very loud, and so here's the story. Maria. So what happened was the band they canceled at the last minute as well, and they made a note on their social saying, "We drove 600 miles to Upheaval, and we came, and the stage was too small. So it was a direct violation of the contract, and blah, 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 wah, wah, wah." So And then they said, we're coming back to Grand Rapids this fall. And of course they did. They went on tour with Ice Nine Kills. And they basically said, we're looking forward to seeing each and every one of you. And I'm like, okay, here's the situation. So now you're telling your fans that you got to pay twice to see one concert from you guys. It's like, why couldn't you just modify your set? Because, you're on the bill with a bunch of other bands. You're sharing your stage with, a bunch of other bands and their instruments. I mean, that's the way of life sometimes. They have to set up all the instruments at once on one stage because you're in a festival. And it takes forever to change from one set to the next. That's the way it is. It's kind of like playing at a stadium that was built for football, but they also have baseball as well. You understand what I'm getting to? I mean, it's, cookie cutter. That's what it is. But here's the thing. Instead of paying for one concert and maybe an opener or two, you're paying for 24 bands. And the fact of the matter in this moment was they simply said, here's the thing. They were once a very modest band that toured the country in a beat up van. And, Maria Brink, she was a single mom who grew up in a very horrible house. She had a bad life growing up. Her mom was a junkie. And at 15, 16 years old, she had a kid. And she was a survivor. But now, she became this big rock star all of a sudden. And, it's like deciding to drive away because your writer said no yellow M&Ms. And all of a sudden you go into your dressing room and boom, here's the yellow M&Ms. All mixed in with the other M&Ms. It's like, why do some artists do that? Is it karma? Or what? But here's the thing about Poppy. Poppy's story is more forgivable because let's face the facts. Several years ago, my good friend Darren Gibson from Southpaw, he had a big party because it was Southpaw's anniversary party, 10th anniversary, I think it was. And he required everybody to wear a mask, even though the mask mandates had been heavily lifted. And it was to help people who were immunocompromised. And I'm guessing that's Poppy's situation. She's immunocompromised herself. And, people were crying that, it's like, people were so mean to her. And crying that, look, that is the least heavy metal thing you can ever do. Because, there's bands that play around fire and smoke. And, Gojira, during their set, they had a lot of flames shooting up all over the place. But here's the thing. Women should be allowed to rock too. I agree. There's some damn good women out there who are professional musicians. And, Hailstorm is one of my favorite bands. Lizzie Hale is a brilliant musician, brilliant guitarist. Her brother, RJ, who is the drummer, awesome drummer as well. He puts a lot of flair into his music. Hailstorm, of course, they played the festival a couple of years ago. And, I mean, the point is, folks, is that people, Poppy does her thing. Poppy does her thing. She's a screamer. She's a, her record with Knock Loose, Suffocate was a killer track. I love Knock Loose. That's a band that they should book one day. But let's face the facts. We are dealing with a massive problem in Canada, and that Canadian problem is the wildfires up there. And guess who became a royal pain in the ass with that situation? Trump. So this is what Mr. Trump is doing. This is what Donnie's doing. He's threatening to put on more tariffs on the Canadian goods because he's telling the Canadian government, he's telling the Prime Minister, you have a horrible Forest Service, and they haven't done jack shit to stop this blaze from happening, and it's happened several times. And I'm like, okay, asswipe. Okay, asshole. What have you done since you became president the second time around? Oh, yeah. You hired Elon Musk, who eventually became the first ever trillionaire in history, to head up this stupid government agency, Doge, which made drastic cuts to all of our programs. And now we have, and it's like, of course, we just had that recent situation with, Trixie dragged me to the woods again. Yeah, I was telling you yesterday I was struggling with all the bugs and stuff. So here's the problem. Look at what happened with the situation regarding the lettuce sold at Taco Bell. They, we made major cuts to the FDA. And, Donald Trump is a man who believes in conspiracy theories more than science. Than actual science. And what Trump should be doing, instead of screaming and yelling at the Canadian government and pointing fingers, this is what our country should do. They should send up some of our best firefighters to help fight this blaze, so that way we can have a normal summer, or what's left of it. People want to be outside this summer. They want to go out and grill. They want to, spend time, have picnics with their families. They want to go to concerts. They want to go to sporting events. Of course, right now, our Detroit Tigers, thankfully, they are in Anaheim. They just beat the Angels last night 2-1. And what's funny is that even though they play in a retractable roof stadium, Milwaukee had to cancel their game last night. You see, folks, this is what happens when you elect a Republican as our president. Shit gets done, but it's the wrong shit. And the people who pay the price the worst are you and me. And now, and not only that, Donald Trump is not a friend to the environment. Look at what happened. I told you this once, I'll tell you again. Donald Trump is no friend to the electric car. He wants, we're all paying $4.29 a gallon gas because of, the fact that we're not giving money to Canada, we're giving money to Israel instead. And what ends up happening is we're paying big time dollars to fight their war with Iran. So that way Donald Trump can keep hiding the Epstein files. It's a distraction, folks. It's a distraction. I told you also, he told this oil company, he told a company from France called Total I'll bet you the folks from Gojira have heard of Total. It used to be Total Oil, but now it's Total Energies, because now they're trying to shift their company to be more into renewable energy, which is brilliant. They wanted to build windmills here in America, but Trump said no and is now paying Total $1 billion a year not to build windmills in America. At a time when Americans are now paying out the ass in the pump and also paying higher energy bills, and and that's what Trump wants. He pretends to care about the small guy, but instead he's putting his wealthy buddies ahead of everything. Oh yes, and of course, I've talked about this in previous podcasts. He recently gave a presidential pardon to a company in Michigan, right here in Michigan, in Gaylord, called Diesel Freaks, because the Biden administration ordered them to pay like $750,000 in fines because they failed emissions testing. Well, guess what happened? Trump told Diesel Freaks that you're off the hook because, Biden does, because Biden cared about the environment, whereas Donald Trump, he doesn't. And look at what's happened in Gaylord a few years ago. A massive tornado ripped through the west side of town, and it destroyed some of the biggest buildings in town, including a Hobby Lobby. Yeah, it destroyed a Hobby Lobby. It destroyed the Little Caesars Pizza. Lots of businesses had damage. Power lines were down everywhere. It's global warming, folks. It is real. It's climate change. And I don't want to hear, well, we need to pump for more, we need to drill, because who's going to drive an electric car? Folks, we need to make the transition from gas to electric. I mean, we need to make it so that people don't buy gas as much as they do now. And the reason being is because every time, we drive our car, we're putting pollutants in the air that cause climate change. And of course, let's not forget the other atrocities in northern Michigan in recent years. We've had of course, there was a major ice storm last year. Trees and radio towers were all destroyed. And now this massive fog of smoke coming from Canada it's going into northern Michigan. It went into northern Michigan, and you couldn't even see the Mackinac Bridge. And if you had to go across the Mighty Mac, you could only go 25 miles an hour. And Trump is, instead of helping, he's hurting by telling the Canadians, fuck you, this is your fault because your Forest Service doesn't do shit. But here's what I say. It's like Donald Trump is like Cracked Magazine. Cracked Magazine for decades had a segment called Shut Ups, where somebody says something, attacks somebody for whatever, and that person turns around and says, shut up, and delivers a punchline saying that you're the worst person. Yeah, I believe most of the shut-ups were actually drawn by a guy named Don Orheck. He also drew for Playboy magazine for many years, too. So what happened was, Donald Trump is one giant, folks, Cracked Magazine doesn't exist anymore. But guess what? Donald Trump is a walking, talking shut-ups segment. Donald will attack somebody and say something like, in this case, he's telling the Canadian government, your Forest Service sucks, and now we're paying the price with all the smoke. But the Canadian government is saying, shut up, Donnie. You made major cuts to the environment, and you're a part of it. Or, and of course, the other night, he bitched and moaned at the networks. For not airing his speech, and he went on and said that the FCC should take away your license because the voter rolls are bad, and that there was a lot of contempt in getting him kicked out of the 2020 election. Well, guess what? Shut up, Donnie. There's a little something called checks and balances that prevents people from fake votes. There's no such thing as a fake vote in any election, because that's the county clerk's job, to make sure that nobody votes 2 times or 3 times or whatever, like they cry about in 2,000 Mules, which, by the way, was made by a Trump sycophant, Dinesh D'Souza, along with all these folks who had shows on the Salem network. Of course, one of them was Charlie Kirk, who has become the poster child of right-wing stupidity. Let's remember, folks, he died because somebody shot him, and this guy was pro Second Amendment. I can go on and on, folks, but if Cracked Magazine was alive and well today, whoever would write the shut-ups. They have their material handed to them, and it's like we almost don't need Mad or Cracked or any of the humor magazines anymore, or even late night TV. All you have to do is to know the goddamn truth. Donald Trump is a man who has devoted his life to lying to people so that way he can get his way. And, don't blame Canada. Don't be like Sheila Blavatsky from South Park. Of course, she had that song from the South Park movie, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Blame Canada. Yeah, let's blame Canada for the fact that we didn't get to see Poppy on stage last night. No, don't blame Canada. Blame Trump. Because he is public enemy number 1. He is the worst president or any country leader out there. Or at least he's getting as bad as the worst people. I mean, he's already in bed with Israel and Russia. And he's slamming our longtime allies like England and now Canada. He's telling Canada, you are causing all this. But here's the truth. The truth is, it's Donald's fault. Donald Trump needs to shut the fuck up and just simply understand that he is the number one reason why, people, this country is just turning into shit again. And this is why, folks, we need to not just vote Democrat this next election, but to stay away from Democrats, so-called Democrats like Haley Stevens, who unfortunately are in bed with Israel, like Trump is. And to me, if you're in bed with Israel, you're in bed with Trump. And that's who Haley Stevens is. I don't care if she puts out all these ads that attack Trump. It's about what you do that makes the difference. And by the way, here's another piece of political news for you. Mike Cox, by the way, has dropped out of the primary for Democratic, not Democrat, but governor of Michigan. Yeah, so the story is that he was way behind the polls with John James and Perry Johnson, of course. Perry and James are neck and neck. And I notice even though John James got the Donald Trump endorsement, Perry Johnson is still on the warpath, still putting on all these stupid commercials on TV with that god-awful music and yeah, dun, 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 yeah. And the story is, folks, is that this will really shape up the race, in my opinion. I think Perry Johnson still has a lot of fight in him, but let's face the facts. You know, folks, the reason why I'm talking about the Senate race more than the governor's race here in Michigan is because I know that Jocelyn Benson has everyone beat. Chris Swanson, I know some people like Chris because Benson seems to be in bed with the companies that want to build these power centers in Michigan. But I got news for you. You know, Chris Swanson is a cop. He allegedly is pro-life. I don't know why he's still in the race at all. But then again, I have not seen one commercial on TV for Jocelyn Benson. I think she's waiting. You know, it's amazing how much money MAGA has really put into these ads, including, you know, people like Haley Stevens, because Haley, you know, is basically a Democrat in name only. And that's, you know, they know that Mike Rogers might be beat this election, no matter who is against him. But the big difference is Abdul al-Sayed, on the other hand, you know, he is a true progressive. And, you know, as a matter of fact, he's actually coming to town, Grand Rapids, tomorrow on Sunday, along with AOC and Bernie Sanders. I kind of want to go to that. But I don't know if I will be able to with all the trips to downtown Grand Rapids I've been making. But hopefully someday, fingers crossed, I'll see Bernie. But but yeah, I just got too much on my schedule. I do want to go, but it's also kind of tough living with a MAGA Republican dad, and I'm really trying not to bring up politics with him. But anyway, so the rest of the story is, so anyway, in closing, all I'll say is, fuck Donald Trump. He's ruining so many lives, and, you know, people just want to go out and have fun. It's summer. It should be, you know, people should have nice summer days of barbecuing and concerts and baseball games. But instead, we get smoke. And, let's blame Canada. No, you're the one to blame, Donnie. Because, yeah, not only that, you pulled out the Paris Accord. You seem to care less about the environment than other countries, in healthcare, in jobs. It's all about your little ballroom, right? And turning the White House into a junkyard. Ugh, man. I can go on and on. But I gotta get going. Yeah, I gotta leave within the next hour and 15 minutes. So I gotta drag my dog back to the car and get going. So, in closing, all I'll have to say is Poppy should be playing tonight in Columbus, Ohio. I don't know what the air quality is, so maybe we'll see. Maybe she will end up on the Bee-otch list, but who knows. But anyway, time to wrap it up. 'Tis I, your old pal, King Chuck. Good day and good luck. Have a good rest of your weekend.